Hey everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. So here's the latest in regard to the Russia war on Ukraine. The peace talks are showing some promise. They're saying all the parties involved are saying that there's been some movement. Ukraine, especially, is saying that they believe Russia is starting to get a little more realistic in what they're asking for. So we'll see where that goes. The UN issued a court order to Russia to stop the war. This is kind of meaningless. This is kind of just, a paper tiger. They really don't have the ability to stop it. So they're issuing that ruling, but it won't go before The Hague for potentially years. So well after it's possibly all over, let's pray. Biden approved new military aid, new air support, new drones, and so forth. Hopefully that will help. I have mixed feelings about that, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but over 3 million Ukraine residents have now fled the country. Russia has ramped up bombing, especially of residential areas. And so the death toll continues to rise. In Mariupol, it's particularly horrific. Thousands of residents have already died. Thousands more have been injured. And their bombs, the Russian bombs, appear to be very effective because of new technology that we didn't even know they had. And this is according to US officials. The Russians have ballistic missiles that contain some sort of decoy, and this decoy is producing a radio signal that jams the radar of the Ukrainians, and it tricks heat-sinking missiles. So it's diverting their heat-sinking missiles away, and so they're not able to take these bombs out before they strike. We've also seen reports of increased airstrikes in Western Ukraine and Central Ukraine, which was hit for the first time last Friday. A 15-story apartment building was hit. There was at least one fatality. Others were injured. And this falls in line with what Russian pilots are saying, because there was this press conference held, and there were 3 Russian pilots at this press conference, and they claimed that they were ordered to bomb civilian targets, which is a war crime. In a press conference that was streamed on a Ukrainian news outlet, one of the several captured Russian pilots begged for forgiveness. And he said, and this is someone who is said to be a lieutenant colonel and deputy commander. This guy's name, supposedly Maxim Krishtop. He urged other military members to stop attacking Ukraine. And he said, quote, "I think we have already lost the war." In addition to the residential areas that Russia is striking, they also hit a military facility that's only 15 miles from the border of Poland. That was over the weekend. That attack left 35 people dead, another 134 injured. Ukrainian officials also claim that Russia carried out an attack on a village in Belarus. They say that that was a false flag operation and that they plan to blame Ukraine for that attack to try to turn the Belarusian people against Ukraine. Ukraine also alleges that Putin is planning an attack on the Chernobyl nuclear facility. They also say that that is a false flag operation and that they're going to blame that on Ukrainian forces. Russia has also, for sure, shelled and destroyed a historic Ukrainian church last week. That's a 19th century building that was barely spared, they said, in 1941 when Nazis had attempted to burn it down. So that's now gone. Russian forces also bombed a centuries-old monastery that was in eastern Ukraine. That caused injury to some of the 500 plus refugees that were being housed in the building. 200 of those 500 plus are children, by the way. There's also an update about that maternity and children's hospital that they struck last week. You guys may recall there was this viral photo, and it was of a pregnant woman who was being carried out on a stretcher. Tragically, she and her unborn baby have died. It's horrific. Americans are also being killed in Ukraine. There have been several reporters now and one cameraman who has died. There's several others that have been hospitalized with injuries. And in addition to the murders and the war crimes that are being carried out by Putin, he's also allegedly abducted at least 2 Ukrainian mayors. And there's a video of one having a black bag put over his head and being taken away. And then they've installed Russian-friendly Putin puppets who are now warning Ukrainian residents that any protests will be considered extremism. And so they have those Russian vehicles in these cities that are rolling through the city, blasting out warnings over a loudspeaker, saying that protests are prohibited and that residents are under a curfew from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And then Putin's installed puppets are also making announcements on Ukrainian television. The Kremlin has also arrested the head of their own FSB foreign intelligence branch, also his deputy. And then some sources are saying that these guys are being used as scapegoats for the difficulties that Russia is having in securing a quick win in Ukraine. And there's evidence that Russia's military isn't quite as strong as we were all led to believe. So for one, Russia has put out a call for foreign fighters. A new report says that Russia has recruited 40,000 Syrian fighters, and the Kremlin is offering to pay them $1,100 a month to fight in Ukraine. Of the 40,000, they say 22,000 have already been approved, although none have actually been deployed that anyone knows of. The other 18,000 were registered separately, they say, and they're still being vetted by a mercenary group that I want to talk to you guys about in a few minutes. But first, I want to also say that Russia recently reached out to China and asked for military equipment and other aid. Now, they're both denying it, but of course they have reason to deny it. But here's the thing, we've all been told that next to the US, Russia has the strongest military on the planet. They've got the most advanced equipment. And in the first week of this war, all of the analysts were saying, oh, yeah, well, Ukraine has been holding their own. But remember, Russia's fighting with one arm tied behind their back. They've only used like 10% of their arsenal at this point. So there's no way that Ukraine can outlast the Russian forces. Once Putin unleashes the full power of his military, there's no way they're going to fall. So what's up with this? There's only 3 things that could explain this. First, is the obvious, right? That their military isn't as well equipped. It isn't as fierce and well trained as we were led to believe. The second reason could be that this is a head fake. It could be that Russia just wants everyone to think that they need assistance and to lull their adversaries into maybe a false sense of security. The third reason, and this could be used in conjunction with the second possibility, is that Russia could be testing China. They could be testing to see where their loyalties lie and to get them to publicly pick a side. Although, why would they be asking for foreign volunteers? Why would they be bringing in people from Syria if number 2 or 3 or both are the case? So we'll see. In the meantime, Western countries keep ramping up the pressure on Putin and Russia. The US and the UK said that they will no longer trade with Russia. Also, some of Russia's imports are going to be hit with high tariffs. The White House said that, quote, this will deny Russia more than $1 billion in export revenues and ensure US citizens are not underwriting Putin's war. Also, agriculture companies have now suspended business in Russia. Companies like John Deere, Caterpillar, and others, they've all either shut down Russian facilities or they've stopped selling their products and services in Russia. And again, this is not out of the goodness of their heart. This is because they can't. They just can't do it. And it's important for us to keep in mind that a large portion of the world's grains and sunflower seeds and sunflower oil are produced in Russia and Ukraine. So this is going to push food prices even higher than they've already been. One potentially good bit of news is that oil has now dropped below $100 a barrel. So we may see some relief at the gas station. Biden needs, in my opinion, to start releasing more of our reserves. Also, maybe possibly cut off some of what we supply to countries like Japan, to keep trying to drive these prices lower. We're also apparently in talks with Iran to potentially supply us with more oil in exchange for some sanctions relief. But, that's complicated because we still have their nuclear agreement that we're trying to work out details on. So that complicates things. The Biden administration also is considering a pause on the gas tax. However, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said they're concerned that it might benefit oil companies rather than consumers. So we'll see what happens with that. She also said something that really highlights the Biden administration's disconnectedness from average Americans. She said, quote, "I think the American people understand the importance of suffering some toll themselves in order to uphold the values that we hold dear that are fundamental to a peaceful world order." I mean, yeah, people overwhelmingly want a peaceful world order. But if they can't afford to put fuel in their tanks to get to work, to get their kids to school, they're not going to care so much about the peaceful world order. These people don't seem to comprehend that some people literally have to choose between groceries for the week for their family or being able to fill up their vehicles to get to work. And this is not just a Biden administration issue. We've had this problem with every administration. This is the problem when you have people who live privileged lives making decisions for people who are working their asses off every day, and then they still have too much month left at the end of their money. Anyway, lawmakers are pressuring the administration to supply more weapons and to supply planes to Ukraine. Something that I'm conflicted about. Like I said, Biden has committed to sending over more weapons and so forth and drones. At my core, I'm a fighter and I'm a protector. If I see any living being attacked, being hurt, my initial impulse, my immediate impulse is to jump in, is to protect them, is take them down. Do whatever the fuck you have to do, take them down and protect these people. And having grown up in a house with bullies and dealing with others as an adult, I know the only thing bullies respond to and the only way they back down is when they're faced with strength, right? Any sign of weakness and they pounce and they don't let up. The other side of me, however, the logical side of me recognizes we're risking a potential third world war with nuclear weapons on both sides. This is a very difficult situation. Anyway, back to the US lawmakers. They're also asking the Treasury Department to offer rewards to anyone who can help in the seizure of oligarchs' assets. And this is an issue because these oligarchs have hidden these assets in the names of other people. They're also asking Biden to impose sanctions on the Wagner Group. And this is what I alluded to earlier. This is a private mercenary group, and they're a Russian contractor. And they're said to be working around the world fighting on Russia's behalf over the last several years. And Ukrainian officials believe that their group, the Wagner Group, was behind and involved in these numerous recent attempts to assassinate Ukraine's president, Vladimir Zelensky. So some people believe that Putin's use of the Wagner Group in Ukraine is just another sign that his military isn't up to the task or they're just severely depleted. But we have to be very careful about these guys. And again, they are now vetting 18,000 potential Syrian fighters to come in and help the Russians. Anyway, many have said that Morale is extremely low among the Russian soldiers, that some of them are simply refusing orders to deploy to other cities and fight. And this makes sense because remember, Russia's military is not like here in the US. Our military members enlist because they want to. For whatever reason, they want to fight. They do it out of a sense of loyalty or patriotism, or, maybe it's like a choice between that and jail, and they've got some issues that they want to work out. But in Russia, the men are required to serve in the military for a certain period of time. So you've got young people, you've got teenagers, you've got late teens, early 20s, men who are only there because of their age and because of that requirement. They don't want to fight, and they certainly don't want to die or kill other people for Russia. They're only there because they have to be there. So anyway, Zelensky addressed Congress today, March 16th. Ahead of the meeting, he released a video simulating an attack on the Eiffel Tower in France. In his presentation to Congress, he tied it to 9/11, to Pearl Harbor. Apparently, people were crying. People were very emotional about what he presented. I don't doubt that it's going to have an impact on leaders around the world. But, again, we're looking at World War III potentially. We're looking at a nuclear war that will end everything. Even the people who survive it will be living in hell, essentially. Fighting for food, all of these movies that we've seen over the years, the Mad Max scenarios, these end of the world type movies, that's what people will be living through if they survive it. So it's a tough call. Meanwhile, Putin is still trying desperately to keep the truth from his people. He's now banned Instagram in the country, and he's trying to designate Facebook and Instagram as an extremist organization because they made the decision to allow posts calling for violence against Russian forces. Meanwhile, on Russian state TV, their hosts are literally making threats of nuclear war. They're saying unless sanctions are dropped and reparations are paid to them for the sanctions, they're calling for nuclear war. Other news hosts who called for the end of the war that I shared with you guys, they've now been taken off of the air. And one brave woman, one brave Russian citizen who outed Putin's war crimes on a live broadcast has now been taken into custody, and her attorneys say they can't find her. She's been disappeared. TV producer Marina Obsyanyakova, I believe is how you pronounce it. She ran onto the set of Russia's most watched TV channel, their state channel, Channel 1. She held up a sign behind the news anchor and she was chanting, "Stop the war." The sign she held up, it said things like, to end the war, stop believing the lies, stop believing their propaganda, something to that effect. Ovsyannikova posted a video online prior to that on-air protest, and she said that her father is Ukrainian and her mother is Russian. She told the viewers, quote, "What is going on in Ukraine is a crime. Unfortunately, I have been working at Channel 1, working on Kremlin propaganda, and now I am very ashamed. I am ashamed that I've allowed the lies to be said on TV screens, that I let the Russian people be zombified. Take to the streets. Do not be afraid. They can't jail us all." Very brave, but again, she has now disappeared. We don't know what's become of her. I can only imagine. But in other protest news, a group of people took possession of Oleg Deripaska's mansion in London. You guys might know that name from the whole Trump-Russia saga. And they hung signs from the balcony of his home that read, quote, "This property has been liberated." And then there was another sign that said, quote, "Putin, go fuck yourself." I agree. And then to end this segment on a more lighthearted note, Russians are becoming so desperate for McDonald's that they're willing to pay outrageous amounts of money for a reheated hamburger. Business Insider says that Russians are trying to sell McDonald's food online, and that this is because the company has closed all of their 800 restaurants in Russia. The sellers are asking for the US equivalent of $36 for a Big Mac. This is something you're going to take home and reheat. And $18 for a McDonald's breakfast that includes a McMuffin sandwich and potato pancakes.
McMuffin!
And they're selling McDonald's packaging for even more money. $74, you guys, the equivalent of 74 US dollars for a McDonald's glass. And the article said that Russian citizens rushed to McDonald's stores after the news came out that they were going to be closing everything. And one man, they showed him on the news, he completely filled his refrigerator with McDonald's hamburgers prior to the stores closing. He went and just wiped them out and filled up his refrigerator. But tell me again how, these people are used to suffering. They're used to going without. These people are tough. They're going to tough this out. They're not going to miss anything. Like I said, that was the older generation of Russians. This is the McDonald's. This is the iPhone generation of Russians. Anyway, guys, I'll let you know if I hear any more. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Take care. I'll talk with you soon.